Tornadoes are cool. A perfect scenario is one that is away from a populated area and gorgeous to see from miles away, if you're lucky enough to do so safely. But then, they can also be terrifying forces of nature that leave destruction in their wake that would make a kaiju blush. Case in point, tornadoes can also not be illuminated brightly or visible like this, but rather be an ugly or rain-wrapped wedge that is all but impossible to see even as they bear down on you and tear everything around you apart. And it is one of those kinds of tornadoes we're talking about today. A large, wedge-shaped monster that left destruction in its wake Godzilla would even gawk at. During the 2011 Super Outbreak of tornadoes, one extremely powerful EF5 tore through the town of Smithville. This was a tornado that seems to get a little overlooked, which shocks me, as it caused catastrophic damage akin to the very worst that you see in movies like Twister or Into the Storm, but in real life. This is a story that sounds like something you'd see in an over-the-top tornado movie like that, and not something that happened to real, everyday people. Just like the sinking of the Titanic almost sounds like it was a story written to be as tragic and unfair as possible, with heroes acting to the last to save those that they could. But just like the Titanic, this did happen to real people. Real, everyday folks. This tornado itself reached a width of over 3/4 of a mile wide, had over 200-mile-per-hour winds, and retained its EF5 strength as it tore through both residential and commercial sections of the city of Smithville. The damage it left was so catastrophic that it gave rise to some internet urban legends that, while false, honestly sound like they could have been in the realm of reality for this monster. This is the 2011 Smithville Tornado. The conditions that led to the 2011 super outbreak were, no pun intended, a perfect storm. The outbreak was the largest, costliest, deadliest, and most intense of its kind in history, toppling the 1974 outbreak from its place at the top of the totem pole when it comes to the number of tornadoes occurring in a single day. The conditions coming together were described as the most conducive to violent tornadoes ever documented, and boy did it deliver on that. The outbreak spawned many incredibly powerful monster tornadoes, including the one that left this deep scouring dug deep into the ground near Philadelphia, Mississippi. But that was far from the only tornado. From April 25th to the 28th, storms dropped over 360 tornadoes across 21 states and Canada. Tornadoes were on the ground from Texas to southern Canada. April 27th alone had the most tornadoes. In that 24-hour period of time, there were 216 confirmed tornadoes on the ground. By the time the outbreak was over and the dust settled, it was the second deadliest outbreak in history. There were a total of 134 EF0 tornadoes, 140 EF1s, 49 EF2s, 22 EF3s, 11 EF4s, and 4 EF5 tornadoes. To cover the outbreak effectively, I need to do a series on it, and maybe after the 1974 outbreak series I'm tentatively planning I will, but that is not today. Today we will be focusing on one tornado in particular from this outbreak, the Smithville EF5 tornado. So let's get right to it. With the background on the storm covered, this is the story of the tornado. The tornado struck Smithville, Monroe County, Mississippi, which was incorporated in 1845 with a population of 773 in 2011, on April 27th. On April 27th at 3:42 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the storm that struck Smithville existed in a thermal boundary in northeastern Mississippi, thought to have been the same one that spawned the deadliest tornado of the outbreak, the Hackleburg EF5 tornado, which is this terrifying monster you see on screen now. Also video-worthy. Due to existing in this thermal boundary, conditions for another intense tornado are theorized to have been enhanced. It was a perfect storm scenario brewing in the gut of the perfect storm that was tearing across the country on April 27th. The cell first produced a long-track EF3 tornado. Then when it died, this monster was born. Dropping to the ground 3 miles southwest of Smithville, the tornado touched down near Glover Wilkins Lock. The tornado was moving fast, and after touching down, it rapidly intensified. It grew so intense that it gouged a foot-deep trench into the ground that you could still see more than a year after the tornado passed. 3 minutes after forming, at 3:45 p.m., the tornado struck Smithville. Moving northeast, the tornado, which some have described as possibly one of the most intense tornadoes in history, and I would agree it has to be up there, but I can't put it at the #1 spot, though it was a powerful and incredibly destructive force of nature, raced into Smithville and instantly began tearing buildings off their foundations and sweeping them away. The damage was described as remarkably intense, as it more or less followed along the route of Mississippi Highway 25. The first fatality of the tornado occurred when it struck a bed and breakfast. The whole structure was obliterated. The concrete blocks within the structure were even smashed into small pieces that rained down in a nearby field like hail. Semi-trucks were thrown incredibly long distances, flying around the tornado before being violently ejected. One landed 250 yards away from where it was picked up, and another landed 300 yards away from where it was picked up. Sometimes, these stories sound like things you really only think you'll see in tornado movies, like Into the Storm. They really do. Next, the tornado hit a metal storage building, several of them, and 14 mobile homes, obliterating everything in its path. The tornado then fully entered Smithville, having so far been striking the outskirts of the city. The foundations of a brick home were dislodged out of the ground. Well-built homes were obliterated and swept away as if they were never there. Trees were completely debarked. Shrubbery outside of homes was stripped and shredded bare as well. Tar and chip pavement was lifted out of the ground and left in piles alongside the road. Plumbing in some of the homes that were hit was even yanked out of the ground and reported as missing after the tornado. Smithville City Hall, the post office, the police station, water systems, several churches, and many businesses and homes were all destroyed as the tornado gouged its path through town. A medical clinic was leveled as well, and its supplies were literally being thrown all over the city by the tornado. Furniture, plumbing, and appliances were all shredded or outright missing from home sites after the tornado passed over. A 1965 Chevrolet pickup truck was thrown from a home and straight up never found. Vehicles were thrown hundreds of yards, but this one was never found. Maybe its mangled wreck is still lying out there somewhere, or maybe it was torn into unrecognizable pieces like many other cars had been. Some vehicles were even wrapped around trees due to the extreme force of the tornado. An SUV was thrown half a mile away from where the tornado tossed it, and it smashed into the top of the Smithville Water Tower and then flew an additional quarter mile before smashing to the ground. It wasn't only brick homes that were leveled or had their foundations stripped bare, but also a large brick funeral home. The E.E. Pickle Funeral Home was reduced to its bare foundation slab. Its debris were found miles away in the woods. It is also theorized that a second core existed within this tornado, because a granite tombstone in a cemetery was found blown over in the opposite direction of the tornado's passage, and others were thrown clear out of the cemetery or broken. The tornado finally exited the city on the northeast side of town after cutting a path clean through it, and it only weakened once it did. As it entered a wooded area, the tornado uprooted multiple trees and power lines. It then entered Marion County, Alabama, now only causing EF1 damage to buildings and mobile homes near Bexar. The tornado did briefly rebound in intensity, reaching EF3 strength as it hit Scottsville, Alabama, and Hamilton, Alabama. The tornado then weakened to EF2 strength as it reached Franklin County, Alabama, destroying chicken coops, large trees, and some mobile homes, and ripping the roof off of a house and damaging the roofs of other homes. The tornado was still about 3/4 of a mile wide and left a total damage path just shy of 40 miles long before it finally disappeared at 4:23 p.m. Central Daylight Time. With all those details and pictures like this of the aftermath just have a somber atmosphere to them. This tornado was the first F5 to strike the state of Mississippi since 1966. A number of people in the area did not even think the warning was that intense or noteworthy. A 79-year-old female known as Helen said that she heard the warning but did not take shelter. She said that it happened before she knew it. A 31-year-old named Amanda was a college graduate living in a brick house but was driving at the time. Her mother called her to take shelter, but she didn't. Another person, only known as Alex, said that they did not believe they were in the warned area for the tornado and thus didn't attempt to take shelter either. Smithville had 4 warnings at various points of the event, but several interviewed persons after the storm never took the effort to get into a safe place. They just didn't think it was serious. And after reading about the chaos of the storm, they were lucky. Former governor of Mississippi, Haley Barbour, visited Smithville a few days after the tornado struck and viewed the state of the city and the damage it left. The Red Cross also arrived quickly, offering aid to those affected. I really do think, even though we lost 16 of the most precious assets of our community on that April 27th, 2011, at approximately 3:47 p.m., it changed the outlook for our town forever, and it changed the families' lives forever. Smithville's former mayor, Greg Kennedy, said years later, "This has been the fastest 10 years of my life. It doesn't seem like 10 years. It seems like it was yesterday. When I sit down and ponder the last 10 years, and you have children to get married, you lose your mother, and you have 7 grandchildren, you realize time goes on," he added. The SUV in this picture here is the one that was thrown half a mile by the tornado into the water tower, and then another 1/4 mile before striking the ground. A total of 16 people died in Smithville, and the monster that leveled the town continued its terror as it ripped through Alabama and killed 7 more people, before finally dissipating 41 minutes after it first touched the ground. 116 structures in Smithville were swept away as if they were never even there. The only things left being the pieces scattered across several miles of area. It's crazy to me how tornadoes this intense, or specifically this tornado, just doesn't seem like it gets talked about as much as it should. And I'm not saying it doesn't, but this one seems to get overlooked, and I'd never even heard of it until it was requested that I talk about it on the Xenia tornado video. And I can see, too, how people might not have wanted to take shelter. Video of the tornado exists, and at times, it doesn't even look like one, which makes it all the more terrifying when you know the intense scale of the destruction that it was leaving in its wake. Sometimes tornadoes don't look like tornadoes, and in my opinion, those are some of the scariest ones. Because if you don't know what you're looking at, you won't know until it's too late. There are CCTV videos of the tornado from inside buildings. One that stuck out to me as I was watching footage of this event was when the ceiling of a carport was being torn off and lifted up towards the sky, and the camera looked straight up into the tornado. It was terrifying to see the metal bend and twist before the roof was just ripped up, and then it was just gazing up into the eye of the tornado. The image here of the tornado in the distance is actually a still from a video as well. It is at one point that you can hear the people recording talking in awe and how large the wedge tornado was. Videos are a crucial part of telling the story correctly. We're blessed to live when we do because we have all the information and footage in easy reach, and we can see how the real people who were there reacted and what they said in that moment, and we can easily learn these stories that need to be told. And if you like tornadoes like I do and are fascinated by the stories, check out my other videos on them. I'll put them on screen at the end, and be sure you like and subscribe if you enjoy stories or videos like this and you want to see more of them, because it helps me grow and lets me know the kind of content that you want to see. Tornadoes are a new video niche for me, but one I've wanted to do for a long time, so I hope you'll join me on this journey and check out some of the other stories I cover as well. And if you have a specific tornado you want me to cover, let me know. This one was requested, so I might very well cover specific ones you suggest. I want to do tornado videos about once a month going forward, so hit me up with specific ones you want to see, and I'll cover them when I can. The next one I'm going to cover in about a month is the 1974 DePaul Daisy Hill, Indiana tornado. That said, have a good one, everyone. Thank you for watching.